Hey Tobi, what should we do today?
Exactly the same as every day, Bibi. We will conquer the world.
But we've already done that yesterday.
Well, okay. What about talking about creativity?
Talking, creativity, creating the new.
Cars can't fly? We will show you that with creativity anything is possible and that this wonderful ability is in each and every one of us.
Find out why we desperately need the new but hate it at the same time. So, hello, dear listeners, and welcome to our Siemens podcast, Talking Creativity. For our first session, we have invited a very special guest from Siemens. What do we actually want to talk about today in our podcast?
I mean, I guess at first we're really proud of having our next session ready. But as a little disclaimer, there are some noises in the podcast that might annoy a little bit. We try to reduce them as much as possible. However, we are learning, so it's getting better. But still, we were just so happy with the recording that we don't want to move it away and do another one. And I hope it's worthwhile listening. What do you think, Bibi?
I totally agree with you. And I think there is no real perfection level that we can reach. But I think maybe it's our level of perfection already, because what we want to achieve is that we have really an open discussion with our guests and just have inspiring conversations.
And it's also about surprising conversations. What I can say that this session is also talking about, or better to say, we talked about and we learned how a farm can prepare you for a job at Siemens. I think I never thought about this connection. Or we also touched upon the connection between walking or running and creativity, so how that is influencing each other. We also talked about tractors driving on a German autobahn.
And we talked about your first day at Siemens, Tobi. Also what we can learn from the experience about our creativity.
And what is also a very important fact that we touched upon is, I guess, that we try to talk about leadership for creativity. And specifically, we talked about psychological safety and at least some different factors that we can use to create that psychological safety in a team.
What we also always want to include in our podcast is a little creativity exercise. So we can challenge our guests also a little bit and see how creative they really are. And we also did that with our guest this time.
And our guest was super creative. Yeah, I don't know. It's nothing more to say, I guess. We're already anyways talking a lot. Listen to our second podcast. Here it comes. Have fun.
But before we start, we want to get to know our guest a little bit more and give our listeners the opportunity to do so as well. So therefore, let me start with a little introduction. So our first podcast guest today has been with Siemens for many years. He originally studied engineering in Nuremberg at the campus of technology Georg Simon Ohm. Whether he still has that much time to dive deep into technology is something he has to tell us later, because today he is responsible for the entire factory automation business within Siemens Digital Industries with more than 10,000 employees. Okay, wow, that's certainly a very big responsibility that he bears here. At the same time, that's exactly what excites him, taking responsibility himself and lending a helping hand. That is what our guest learned at a very early age already, when he grew up on a farm. But we don't know whether he already had responsibility for as many animals on the farm as he currently has people in his worldwide team. Our guest always loves to try something new. And when we asked him whether he would call himself creative, he answered in capital letters, of course. For him, creativity is the freedom to think. A very exciting point of view, because we imagine it would be a huge challenge to find time for creativity and thinking in his very well-planned everyday life. So we are quite curious how and when he actually finds time to think during his busy days. Our guest does not believe in an individual superpower, but he is a great team player and very much convinced that only a team can possess superpowers. Our guest would love to be invisible and secretly be a fly on the wall while his children are talking. We would also find that very exciting, because we believe that we can learn a lot from listening to children, discovering the world. Because it is precisely this openness to the new and discovering the world that is so important for creativity. So now long story short, please join us in welcoming Factory Automation CEO Rainer Brehm. Welcome to our podcast, dear Rainer. Nice of you to take the time for us today.
Wow, Bianca, thank you very much.
Hi, Rainer. Also from my side.
So, as I just mentioned, you grew up on a farm. Would you say that it prepared you for your current role somehow?
I don't know, but definitely it was a very nice experience. When I was a child, maybe it was not nice, because basically there was not so many vacations, if any at all. And you suddenly, you were always kind of involved in working, On the other side, looking back, I mean, this was a great experience, because you always had to do something and always different things. You had very early responsibility, So maybe that also formed somehow my life. And it's also interesting because farming nowadays in Germany, at least at that size, my parents had a farm, is also not really economical. So it's not like, we always need to think, okay, what we do different in order to kind of, survive having a small farm.
I can imagine that's definitely tough. And I would say probably getting up early is really, really important for, I don't know, feeding cows or whatever. But was that hard for you in the beginning, like getting up early, or are you an early bird anyway? So
I'm probably more an early bird, but I didn't feed cows in the morning. I basically kind of, did try to recap something for what I need to learn for school. Because I knew if I put it in my short-time memory, then I could, recall it in a test. And so I did this normally in the morning before breakfast.
That was exactly my strategy as well. But that brings us to the first thing actually concerning creativity, because that the research actually shows that we are mostly creative in the morning. That's probably not true for people who are not early birds. I mean, what is early, right? That's usually something that depends on your own definition. But the mornings are, at least what research shows, when you are fueled with extra coffee, for example, that really pushes your creative ability. So do you see there's something that in the mornings your brain is spinning and bringing up ideas, or when is your time of the day when things pop up in your mind that are probably new ideas concerning problems you're confronted with?
Now, having 3 children in the morning, normally it's not where you spend time for creativity. You basically prepare them for kindergarten or for school. That's not the time. But if you tell that, maybe that's really interesting because, I in the Corona time, I start running in the morning and really early somehow, catching the sunrise somehow. So it could be before 6 o'clock even. Mm-hmm. And running there then 40 minutes or 45 minutes, that definitely, I mean, it was painful, getting up and getting out. But if you then somehow running, you really basically run in the little bit dark in the sunrise. And that's probably inspiring.
And a really good feeling afterwards, right? Before it's a bit, oh God, do I really want to do this? But afterwards you have a quite good feeling. It's quite a satisfied feeling.
Yes, and it probably takes the first 10 minutes where you say why you do this.
Yeah,
can you imagine that? But it makes you kind of proud afterwards, right? Afterwards, you come home. Everybody's probably still asleep of your family. I don't know, and then you're like, "Hey, I already did my workout today." So, yes, strike.
Absolutely, It was amazing because I like to do it when the sunrise comes. Then I was a little bit disappointed when it was kind of real summer because the sun was so early I couldn't stand up while it was still dark.
I think that's something a lot of people share with you. That brings us probably to the point that is really something that we're really curious of. So, what is creativity for you or to you?
Tobias, I would ask you because you're the expert.
Very smart.
In the introduction, I already stated a little bit because you already gave us some insights. Creativity for you means the freedom of thinking, the freedom to think. So maybe you could do quite a little deep dive on that. What exactly do you mean with that?
I'm not so much creative with my hands, So, you could also be very creative painting pictures or do sculptures. I'm not so creative with my hand. I like to be creative thinking about topics. And then for me, creativity is, the freedom of creating maybe new things, or maybe I don't know whether they're new, but at least for new, when you think about it, are new, and somehow things which changes behaviors, changing, does something great, that creates value. That's for me creativity. And I need to maybe think about it, but then normally the spark comes up whether when you are really then running or talking to people. I mean, that's for me also, when I talk to people and somebody, maybe I have something in my back, but I didn't come to the conclusion, or, I didn't come to a good idea, but somehow then I get a different spark by a comment from somebody, and suddenly I say, wow, that's a good idea.
I totally feel you. That's actually how my creativity also works. And that's a nice fact that you brought up, that every human being is kind of different, right? So I don't know, Bianca is probably also more like us, right? But there are other people out there who are really kind of, I don't know if it's related to introvert people, but I would say or guess that introverted people are more creative in a silent space, in their own room, probably not talking, and their ideas are spinning in their head. But you and we, I guess all three of us, are more creative while talking, right? So, and it's probably exactly due to that fact, what you mentioned, that you were already thinking about a problem, right? And you let your brain kind of think or digest the problem thinking, right? And it was going down into your unconsciousness. And then while talking, this unconsciousness was able to connect some older thoughts, older problem thinking, older information with something new, and then in that moment it makes totally sense and put up this probably spark this eureka moment, this moment of insight. Or you mentioned your perception of creativity is the ability to really think. And what is really interesting for us, I guess, is how do you manage to have time during your busy schedule to really think? Do you have blockers in your calendar, or how do you manage to really have the time?
I don't have blockers. That's a pity, because if I would have blockers, I couldn't manage somehow. But I try, maybe in some aspects, when you fall into routines, your brain is working in routines, and you listen to some meetings which you don't really think, because somehow it's okay, reporting, so let's report. And maybe then you have a spare reserve in your brain of, doing that thinking in parallel, or maybe dreaming a little bit. That's one topic. Another topic, what I really like is, when I talk with have show fixes with people, and I try to walk. So what I do, I put AirPods, and then I walk. Maybe there's a show fix half an hour. I have a certain distance I walk, and I have a show fix of 1 hour. There's a certain distance to walk, and then basically being outside and walking while talking, and then or listening to those persons, it helps me also then getting some new thoughts.
Interesting. So you do it on your phone and with AirPods?
Yes.
Okay, interesting. Because that really relates to a Stanford study, was published, I don't know, a few years ago. They actually found out that walking makes you more creative. So they kind of compared two different groups. One group was working on a problem while sitting, and the other one was working on a treadmill while walking. And those people, I mean, they with a decent amount of people, of course, to make it valid, the results. They found out that it makes you more creative. And you're kind of, did you know about that study, or did you just do it?
No, it was maybe a coincidence.
Okay.
So that means we put on our shoes and walk while doing the podcast?
Yeah, we should try that out, actually.
Yes, we should
So
try
maybe
that.
for your next podcast, you do it while walking.
That's a good idea.
Better. Yeah, that's a really good idea.
The only challenge is always the connection with my phone. I always struggle with that, actually.
As I have did this route several times and know where I have connection and where not. So
Okay.
In our introduction, I also said that you would call yourself creative. How are you creative in your daily business? I mean, what do you have to do during work, or how are you creative maybe with your kids, and what do you learn from them? What can you tell us in that respect?
I like to create visions. I like to engage people and share that vision. And that really, I don't know why, but normally that works quite well. At least I got the feedback that it works quite well, and people like it, get inspired, build on that ideas. So I think somehow that works for me. Yeah, and that's in business life. In private life, my wife says I'm too spontaneous. That could be of booking the vacation, or changing on a short notice, or being spontaneous. What do we eat for dinner? And then I look in the fridge and somehow make something up, and normally it's fine. So somehow I normally don't accept that's not possible. Yeah. So somehow I think something is always possible, and you only need to kind of try, be creative and, try something new. And that works normally in business life and in private life.
Would you say your children inspired you in that way somehow, that you a little bit more creative?
For sure, because you somehow you see yourself reflected in your children, yeah, and they say, well, that's my behavior. So you get a self reflection, yeah, by your children.
You get it mirrored, yeah.
Yeah, you get it mirrored. That's interesting. I also get mirrored, the persistence somehow of the children. If they want something, they're very persistent. And then I figure out maybe I'm too soft because I give in if they're persistent. Yeah. So that is also what I realized.
Does that also apply in the professional context? I mean, for Siemens.
I try to be more persistent, or I try to be not as soft, but it always depends. Yeah, it always depends. If I think being open and soft and discuss. I mean, I'm more in business life. I think I'm more results driven. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, I don't know whether I need to be soft or hard or whatever. At least for me, it's more interesting, are we getting to a good result? That's the only thing which counts. And I think what needs to go in, whether it's soft, it's hard, it's persistent, I think you need to be flexible because every situation somehow is different.
That is actually very interesting because there was also an article in the German national newspaper Welt, which said that companies are geared towards efficiency, and many employees complain that their ideas are very much ignored. And what do you think? How can we create like this balance between productivity and very much being goal-oriented, but still being creative and give it that creative freedom?
I wouldn't say that correlates. For me, getting a good result, it doesn't mean being efficient. That ambidextry, you could, you exploit aspect, you optimize it. That's one aspect. On the other side, you explore. And I think on the explore side, it's not a question of efficiency. It's more a question of result. And, if you come to a good result, which is not on the most efficient way, it's also fine. Yeah, because normally you like to exploit something where you do thousands and you optimize and optimize and optimize. And I think optimization is not the key aspect for explore, and therefore getting a good result on the explore phase, you don't need to be efficient, in my opinion. I know what works on my side normally. Normally I try to get a lot of inputs, yeah, and normally it doesn't converge. I need then the pressure, kind of a deadline, yeah? Mm-hmm. Okay, you need to finalize this until tonight because tomorrow you're going to have a presentation, or you need to do this and this, yeah? Yeah. And somehow then this pressure, then you get efficient. But the complete process is not efficient because, you're reading this and then you get disturbed by that. And that takes a lot of time. But then, the most efficient time is then when you have a deadline and you get pressure, and then somehow you get also efficient on good ideas because somehow then you need to have the ideas. And that works for me.
Interesting, yeah. So the thing you're mentioning was already the two ways of thinking, divergent thinking versus convergent thinking. And both are kind of relevant for creativity, of course. And what you were mentioning is very important for convergent thinking. And in order to converge and find one single solution you probably move forward with, there is definitely important to have deadlines and a kind of a more stricter constraints to apply. And that's also interesting. That brings me to the thought that a lot of people think actually that we are not able to be creative under severe constrained situations, like we don't have time, we don't have resources, we don't have whatever, right? But that's actually most of the time not true, because if you look into a prison, people are very, very creative with very limited materials and with which they try to break out, right? Or try to smuggle a mobile phone in their slippers or whatever, right? So that really shows, and that's also kind of research proven, that constraints actually can foster or increase the creativity. And sometimes that's a very, very important fact or point from your side, Rainer. It's very important to have deadlines and to have kind of a constrained situation in which creativity can still kind of flows freely. So it's a kind of an interplay between freedom, the necessary freedom you have in order to be free and create something new that is probably not fitting the old standards, the old processes, the old system, like the new business model that at first doesn't fit how we do business right now. And at the same time, we need to have the right constraints. And that's probably the difficult situation. How do we configure this situation in order to still get the new things going and the vision going of your future of automation?
while you were talking, I was kind of reflecting, we introduced years ago a lean agile development process where you work in sprints. And somehow sprints is a constraint. If you have a sprint of 2 weeks, you need to deliver something in 2 weeks. Yeah. So you have a constraint situation, but on the other side, you also, if you do that fast and, and learn out of that, you're also creating a high speed of also very creative ideas.
Yeah, definitely true.
And so that process probably helps, having that kind of, teamwork, agile works in cross-functional teams. But then also, in 2 weeks, you need to have the next sprint end, and then you need to deliver something because a customer is expecting it, or at least, you promise it to other teams that you're going to pull that from the backlog and kind of finalize it in that sprint.
Definitely, yeah. So constraints are very important and deadlines are very important for being creative as well. And I think sometimes what we just need to be aware of is that only because you do that sprint doesn't mean that it's already the perfect outcome, right? We need to be aware that sometimes we need to do the sprint like 3-4 times in order to get the result we really need. That's also, I think, a very important fact, that we cannot kind of force creativity, or we cannot force the perfect creative solution, but we can only create an environment for it. And that's probably also a setting or a format or a journey you create in form of a sprint, right? And then you get that going in a way and get at least or the best possible way is get a probably high diverse group in that sprint working together, and that drives the creativity and the new kind of forward.
I like that, and I think, as you said, probably there's not always a perfect result, but at least you have a result which you could reflect with others, and you get feedback. I think that's important, the important aspect, because then you basically have a short cycle, and I think that continuous, feedback is important to get in the right direction, because else, if you do the big shot and try to do something, you could be lucky of having that one golden shot. But you could also be, not be lucky, and you ran in the completely wrong direction and realize it very late.
Yeah, true. It's in the end, it's about learning and pivoting in the right moment into another direction, but keep that kind of cycle of creative work and trying out something new. Looking into Bianca's direction, you're nodding.
I would like to move on to the next topic to get a closer look on the factory automation. So what relevance does creativity have for the factory automation, for the future of automation, Rainer? Why is it so important?
Bianca, I would come back to our 2 aspects of exploit and explore. And I think factory automation, or the automation business, was very much in the exploit phase over the last decades, where we now kind of incrementally improved. We had very, very interesting innovation, but somehow innovations which didn't change a business model, which didn't change core technologies. And I think now with a lot of new technologies coming in, you call up digital disruptions, where suddenly AI comes in, cloud technology comes in, 5G comes in. Suddenly you have so many new technologies which could completely change the way of how you automate it and how automate things. And maybe with that also change the way of your business models. And so I think we come to a phase of where we need to think automation different or new. And that is for me more the explore phase. So I think there will be the age now where we explore how to automate. Mm-hmm. And I like the idea, and I think this is going to be a golden age of automation, because you can automate probably more things than you have automated in the past. Because with the current technology, you normally automate things which are repetitive, which are predictable, because else you cannot automate it. You wouldn't automate something which only happens once, because then you do it probably manually, then rather you automate it. But if you apply AI and a robot or machine, whoever suddenly detects a situation, has a certain perception of a situation, and then can fulfill a task without being pre-programmed, without that task have been thought of before when the robot was programmed, you suddenly can do new things. And I like that vision, and the question is how we get there. And there are some good, first steps in this direction, but not not full blown. I think there's a lot of explore necessary in order to get good steps in this direction.
Yeah. I think the picture you just painted is kind of brilliant, because it shows how how we do innovation, or the how innovation outcome can look like, how that world is getting way more complex compared to looking in the past, I guess, right? And if we see the creative ability and the creativity of all the people, all the wonderful people working for factory automation, if that's the baseline and the ability that makes innovation happen, right? And that future of automation, that vision you just painted, I think then we understand that our creativity and our ability for that is way more in need, kind of, and because it's getting more and more complex, right? And it's more, AI plays a role, right? Automation in different fields. It's 5G. Is that the right view of why creativity is so important, or why it is so important to drive that future of automation?
Yes, because technology doesn't create customer value. So the question is how you apply these technologies to create customer value, and that, for me, innovation, and upfront to innovation needs some creativity to think about that. Number one, and number two, as you said, the topic of complexity. There are two topics probably which could hinder the future of automation. Mm-hmm. One aspect is cybersecurity. Yeah, mm-hmm. And if you fail on cybersecurity, you have a big problem, because then probably most of those technologies cannot be applied. Yeah, and the other one is handling that complexity, but handling complexity on the one side that users don't see it, mm-hmm. or can use can apply automation without going through big tutorials, manuals, trainings. Yeah. Can apply it easily, because you scale only if you have a lot of people which can operate. And I like that on the iPhone. Yeah, I think that was a very good example that there are a lot of complex technology inside, but somehow the usability or the user experience is perfect. Yeah, mm-hmm. and you like to do it. And the question is, what does it mean for automation? Yeah. How can we make these complex technologies you talked about as easy as possible for the user, for the person who is applying automation, and that person normally doesn't know computer science, and it doesn't know latest technologies, but that person knows how to operate a machine, or that person knows how you brew a beer, or how you build a car, and how can we make those people, those technology, give those people the technology at their hand to solve their problems as mm-hmm. easy as possible. And that's, for me, also creativity, making these complex topics as easy as possible.
Beautiful vision. What role does then, you were already mentioning it's all about usability and make it easy for the customer. So what role does the customer play in the innovation and creativity field for you in the front end when we create it for them?
If you wanna create value, mm-hmm. then whether it's value or not value, only the customer can tell. So and then the basic question is, which technology helped to create that value? I think there is where the automation guys come into play. But in order to really verify it, and maybe getting this, as we discussed upfront about this cross-functional teams, how you bring the domain knowledge of the user, of the person, applying automation, about the user who operates the machine, and of maybe our R&D departments together, and to create new things. And I think that exploration phase, as we talked about, probably is more a phase where you do co-creation, mm-hmm. Which we are not used to, because normally we did produce products which are sold in thousands or millions, where every deviation was not good. And normally we did something which is applicable to the broad market. Yes. And that you can do that in a phase of the market where you're more in the exploit phase, because you basically can predict what gonna be. You bring a new product, it's gonna be optimized here and here and here. Market are not changing, so basically you can predict very much, and you don't need to go into co-creation. You talk to some customers and get some feedback, but you don't really need to go into co-creation. I think in that explore phase, co-creation is much more important, as the future is not predictable anymore.
That's really interesting, and I think when doing co-creation, what we often encounter is the feeling of being scared or being afraid of trying out new things together with the customer, to be visionary. And I think that's in general also a big topic concerning creativity. For example, we go into a group meeting or into a workshop, and And often you have that feeling of being scared or afraid to open up what's in your mind, to open up your opinion or your idea. And what do you think, Rainer? What really stifles our creativity? What hinders us from being creative?
Creativity means, you need to invest energy. And that's, it's the same for creativity as it is, if you want to break routines.
Yeah.
If you want to break routines, you need to invest energy. And a brain doesn't normally likes to have the energy saving mode. Yeah. And, if you need to, think and then you need to spend energy, and then, you need to force yourself of doing so.
We rather stay in our comfort zone, right?
Yeah, exactly. If you stay in your comfort zone, you're basically in your routines.
Exactly.
And that is a very energy efficient mode, yeah. And I think that's human to stay as long as possible in an energy efficient mode.
Yeah, it's perfectly right, Rainer. I think that's so true, and we need to understand actually that most of the time, actually, being creative means consuming, or you need way more energy for being creative than doing routine tasks, right? Because every single situation, every single day, you have the decision. Either you go the well-worn path, right? The path that is already known, the autobahn, for example, right? Then it's very easy to drive, right? But if you go into the forest with your car, it's not that easy. You have to find your way. You have probably not the perfectly prepared street, right? But it's kind of a bumpy road. And that's a perfect picture how creativity works, or why it is so hard for us to be creative. And I always like to share my little story of my first work day at Siemens. I was, I guess, 8 hours or something. I was at the office. And what do you do on your first day? Well, you don't really work. You only get new information. And still, at the end of the day, I came home and I was super exhausted. And if I compare that to my work day before Siemens, in my more routine world, so to speak, right, I was probably working 10 hours a day. In my perspective, I was really working hard, but it was all routine. It was nothing new, and it was not that exhausted. So that's something I think we all need to understand, that our human nature is kind of driving us away from being creative. Still, there are so many people who really love to be creative, but because at the same time, even though it's more energy consuming, it's still very rewarding. And a lot of people really have fun doing that because they just love to drive something new, and they have this inner urge of, hey, I want to be part of it. And the best perfect way of being part of what is done here at Factory Automation is doing or putting something of yourself, of your own, into it. That's a perfect picture to explain why it is so hard to be creative.
But for me, basically going into the forest, normally I would take a tractor, not a car. So that would be even our routine for me. Yeah, so even maybe not for you, but for me it would be.
And it's a nice picture. It's always about what's the best equipment for being creative, right? So if you want to drive on the autobahn, you probably need a racing car. Then it's the best way. If you don't want to go off the well-worn path, you need a tractor, right? So
I don't know. I think you need to be very creative going with a tractor on the autobahn. I think that excites you more than with a racing car.
Why not trying it?
That's
okay, you're gonna be in the radio. There is a tractor on A, whatever.
Yeah, nice.
Try something new. Be open.
I like the discussion actually a lot.
So, but to the listeners, don't do that. It wasn't like, and I was told in this podcast to do it.
Maybe we get some pictures or videos.
Exactly.
We're not responsible for that, okay?
If you understand that it's always out of comfort zone being creative, right? We know that, we have that understanding, and it's kind of against our human nature, so to speak. If you say, hey, it consumes way more energy, as you said, Rainer, we're all kind of in energy saving mode. So that's a very, very big task or challenge for all of us, right? For us ourselves to get out of comfort zone, but especially for the leaders. So I don't know if you have any perceptions, any experiences you can share out of the past, anything that comes into your mind. How do you manage to drive creativity in a team as a leader?
Well, I always had good experience with empowerment. Yeah. So and for me, it's kind of having a joint vision, and everybody likes and wants to contribute. And then basically probably always, Bianca said it's a little bit about fear. Maybe it's not fear, but somehow it's about I like to contribute, yeah, and if everybody contributes, I also like to contribute. So it gets a little bit of pressure, kind of a team or peer pressure, yeah, normally, and that keeps people going, yeah. And at the end, if we can then celebrate as a team because we had a great result, but everybody could contribute. I think everybody is also satisfied with the result. And the other important topic is, everybody also pays into the result. And that's another topic, yeah, because I think what you don't want, there was one genius idea and this was this one individual, okay, maybe, but maybe then, you create kind of, envy and, it might not be executed because, it wasn't really, built up by the team and carried by the team. So normally I try to empower, engage the team also in decisions, but also in coming up with ideas. Because I think that's the only way of how you really can sustainably drive things forward.
Yeah.
And we do a process of what is our vision or what is our North Star, and we have a process which is coming from the lean methodology, which is called Hoshing Country. And then there's a kind of deployment. The deployment means, yes, maybe there's some good ideas, some good visions, but for me it's very important that the organization engages with those ideas and builds on it. And if they see it also as their idea and they know what part of that picture they are responsible for driving.
I think as you said, empowering is one of the most important things to really, and what I also heard from your side is being a role model, just like walk the talk, contribute, and by contributing yourself and putting something of yourself out there, right? Being probably the first who puts out probably at first sight, funny, ridiculous, not doable idea that kind of creates this awareness of, hey, if my boss, my manager, my leader, someone of the team is doing that, it's probably also acceptable for me to do that. So I think that's, you already touched upon a very, very important fact that is relevant for driving creativity in a team. And I think it's always important to bear in mind that we're not, that's out of a article, it's not possible to manage creativity, but you can only manage for creativity. Do you have any thoughts on that, Rainer?
Basically, just what manage for means, you need to set the frame.
Yeah.
And set the frame mean it could be a lot of different aspects. Setting the frame could be giving the freedom, of somebody who likes to walk and getting new ideas while walking, let him walk, or somebody who wants to have a creative environment to get good ideas, them a creative environment. These are the aspects which are more kind of on the outside. I think what is a very important aspect if building this kind of environment of trust. Yeah. Because else, if you fear you do something wrong and that's going to be punished, you don't dare to do something new. Basically do something wrong at the beginning. It could be a joke, which is kind of opening up, making an easy atmosphere, but probably doing something wrong just to show, it's fine to do something wrong. Yeah. And that's completely accepted. We need to take risk. And if you don't take a risk, then we're going to lose. And if you take risks, there will be things wrong, and that's completely okay. And that environment of trust, I think, is the basis. Beside kind of, allowing people to do what they think is necessary in order to be creative.
Yeah, that's so true, Rainer. I think you actually touched upon one of the most important things. You called it trust. In research and literature, they probably call it psychological safety. And that's actually exactly what you were mentioning. Putting out something new, something creative, is always connected to risk, because an idea per definition is never perfect. It's very easy to kind of criticize it and find ways where it doesn't work. That already, or again, shows that we're still relating to a very, very, very old age, right? Because if we kind of get this negative feedback and don't feel that safety or the trust in the team to put out ideas in front of other people, we get into this life-death threat situation. So it's the same region inside of our brains, actually, that is activated in that moment. It's kind of called the alarm bell in brain. Yeah, amygdala, whatever, however you pronounce that region in the brain, I don't know. And it activates this automated system inside of us humans that is called act first, think later. And it harms and stifles the analytical reasoning and the bold creative thinking. It kind of shuts that actually down. We are very, very much kind of programmed into finding mistakes, into finding something that doesn't work. in order to drive something new in the very beginning, we need to have a different approach. It's actually very easy to overcome that. And as you said, trust is important. And how do you create trust? I think there's also research out there that we need the hormone oxytocin in our brain. And how do we stimulate that? It's actually about through positive emotions. And the easiest way of create positive emotions is humor, laughter, laughing together. Yeah, cuddling as well is probably not possible during COVID times. But so a nice way. And I think that's what I see is sometimes kind of neglected in business situations, that we don't have time anymore for laughter and for humor. But I think laughing together really on the one hand connects people, and at the other hand side, it definitely creates more positive mood that definitely can spark creativity. What's your thought on that, Rainer?
If you tell me that, I believe you. No, but now I also understand your point of making a joke at the beginning, which is not only kind of breaking the ice, but also getting this kind of positive whatever hormone this is, at least get this going.
Yeah, I actually kind of read an HBR article about this kind of situation. How do you create psychological safety, and creating this positive mood, positive atmosphere is number one. That's very important. And there are so many other nice little tips you can just adopt as a leader in order to manage for creativity or drive the creativity of your team. And it's something like ask for feedback. That's very important. Or ask inspiring questions. You always need to be aware that the person you're communicating with and has a different perspective. So use your empathy and try to build that into your pitch right away in order to not be too bold or not meet the expectations of the other person, right? And replace blame with curiosity. That's so important, because it's easy to blame a not funny at first sight idea or whatever. But on the other hand side, rather react and say, hey, how can we make that work? Or explain your thoughts behind that idea. Even though you probably don't like the idea, you should always try to use your curiosity to understand more about it and find a way, what is the thing you can learn out of that probably stupid idea, right?
What about if you have a group of very introverted people who does the first joke, And that came back then to, okay, but so that's also one reason why you need diverse teams. No, it's not only diverse teams of, of gender or of international, but also, what kind of people you have in your teams, extroverted, introverted, that you have the mixture is important.
That's actually the most researched part. If you look into creativity literature, that's mostly researched diversity, and that diversity has a positive impact on creativity. And it's so important to create diverse teams. And especially also, I mean, in the end, it's a kind of a management of a balance, so to speak, right? Because at first you need diversity, but at the same time, you need kind of a trust, psychological safety, right? And that needs kind of time to build up. So there's kind of a time limit. If a team works together for 2 years, it's probably concerning creativity. It's a nice time to bring someone new in, or exchange a member, or find a new way to bring new perspectives in. Because at that time, probably the psychological safety and trust is like skyrocketing. But at the same time, the diversity or the starts to unfold in a way. So that makes it really hard to be creative, actually, because you cannot just increase one thing or one characteristic of your team, and that always gives you a higher possibility of harnessing the full creative potential.
Now I have a question to you.
Please.
How much is important that the people working together like each other? Because I'm just thinking, the one is the culture of trust. But if everybody kind of likes everybody, then somehow you get this unconscious bias. You only have surrounding with people basically who think the same way as you do, and you feel good. Yeah. So, how much that fits together?
Well, I don't have a perfect answer to that, so I don't know any research on that field about liking people. But I think it's very important to like each other in the way that not necessarily need to be kind of the perfect fit for being friends, but it needs to be a liking for at least respect, right? And especially if it comes to experts, sometimes you kind of think that nobody else knows it better than you, and that's probably true. But at the same time, you always need to be aware that even though you probably are the expert, it's very important to be open for other opinions, other perspectives, especially also in your expert field that can challenge you, right? And that's sometimes very hard for us. I mean, same for me. I mean, I worked in that field of creativity for years now, but at the same time, I always have to admit that even me myself, I'm not perfect in that field. If it comes to liking each other, I think it's important, but it's at the same time totally fine if you have a liking in form of respect and you respect the other perspective and you try to find the best perfect way together.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes sense for you. I mean, that's not a concrete...
No, thank you.
Rainer, I would like to hear your thoughts now because you were smiling the whole time. Our listeners cannot see you, but what were your thoughts on that? Because you were smiling while Tobias was talking.
No. I mean, I was once in a group where we did interviews, and there was at the end always the question of, is he kind of intellectual fine and people leadership and client leadership? But then there was a last question: do you want to drink with him on a lonely island a beer?
Okay.
That was kind of also a question, and there was, if you didn't checkmark that, it was basically it doesn't fit into our culture. And so I was kind of struggling, and I think Tobias made it right. I think you need to have the respect. If you don't respect the people in the teams, you don't create this trustful relationship, which doesn't mean you need to like somebody, but you need to respect somebody and respect the ideas and build on that. And I think that makes sense for me.
Yeah, I have another example I could probably share in that topic, because I think it could be a perfect world if we all like each other. But I think in a big company like Siemens and also factory automation with more than 10,000 people, it's just not possible to like each other on a level like I would drink a beer on a lonely island, like on a friendship level. I once talked to a little startup, and what they told me was that in the beginning they were really keen on having only people together in that team who really would drink the beer on the lonely island. But once they were really growing and getting bigger, and they were looking for really specific professions like programming people and stuff, and they were really in big need, they could not just, find the right people that also fit the liking level they were kind of looking for, right? So at that point of time, they just noticed it's nice to have that perfect cultural world, right, where everybody likes each other, but it's just in a specific region of size of a company, it's just not possible. So I think we have to work with respect and appreciation of each other. And
we move on to the next topic.
So you did want to answer whether you would drink a beer with us.
Yeah.
I
I respect you, okay?
Okay.
At least.
Rainer, then we have to share a beer.
Let's keep it that way.
If she doesn't want to join.
Maybe, I think
so maybe with a wine.
Oh yeah, better. I prefer that one. We were talking about ideas, and Rainer, would be very interesting. I mean, you're probably confronted with many different ideas or presented with many new ideas. How do you handle those ideas?
First, I mean, the one topic, just Tobias answered it. The one topic is curiosity. Yeah, even rejecting, maybe asking again. Yeah, so what it really means, and to because maybe in the first 30 seconds you got it wrong. Yeah, so try to at least understand it better and ask question. And then if somehow it doesn't fit together, then probably going to reject it. Yeah, because at the end, it's also a job to do a certain prioritization because you can't do everything. But for me, basically, liking ideas comes. I think the 2 or 3 aspects very important. First of all, the idea should be somehow good and should make sense. Yeah, it should be logical on the one side. On the other side, it's also important that the person, he or she, is passionate about. Yeah, because if you have a good idea but nobody kind of is passionate about it and is curious of developing it further, you shouldn't start. And for me, that are 2 very important aspects.
And how do you, like, for example, let's say someone's having a meeting with you and is presenting only a very, very raw idea, not a really detailed concept. How do you handle that?
No, as I don't have time, I don't like raw ideas. No, I'm just kidding.
I was actually wondering, because the last time I talked to you, it was pretty raw what we were talking about.
Wow. I was very disappointed when you just said that.
The point with the humor you already understood, Rainer. Perfect. Well done. You're a fast learner, definitely.
No, I think as I like to kind of try to be creative. Yeah, I think it's good to having these raw ideas, and then let's have a short interval iterations, which is better somehow. Because at the end I also feel I could contribute. And then I also probably be proud of being contributing, be capable to contribute, and then probably make that idea also my idea. And though probably I think it's better to come with raw ideas. I don't know. I don't need to reflect myself, but probably yes.
That's great.
And there was one topic just recently. Somebody came with an idea which I think has several flaws. But the interesting thing is, if you talk to customer about the idea, they are excited, and the team is very passionate. So I said, okay, maybe I don't get it, so I give it a try. Team is passionate, customer likes it. Yeah, I think there are flaws in there, but let the team go and let's see what happens. Hopefully, I'm wrong with the flaws.
I think that's a bold decision, but I think it totally resonates and relates to this lifelong learning and growth mindset, right? And I think at some point of time, I don't know if that also relates to what you learned with your kids. I think at some point of time, some people need to make their own experiences. Of course, it's always your job as a father or as a leader, as a manager, to kind of prevent them from them. And of course, especially if it's becoming really expensive for an organization, it needs to be kind of stopped. But I think it's a nice approach, and I think a very bold move.
And at the end, look what's on the market. I mean, a lot of venture capitals are investing exactly in those ideas. I mean, if the market does this, why can't we afford it within a big company of doing the same things?
Yeah, true. And especially what you were saying also relates to how venture capitalists act. Most of the time, what I hear from that side in the startup scene is it's way more about the team. And then ideas second, because what we need to understand, if we adopt this growth mindset and the lifelong learning, we definitely have to understand that that's just the starting point, the idea. That's not the final product, right? But we can still pivot on the way to our final product or learn on the way we go. But the team, that will most certainly stay the same. It's not changing. Probably they're coming new and it's a little bit of change, but it's not that easy to change the team. It's way easier to learn and adopt the idea on the way we learn and go, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I have a little exercise for Rainer prepared. It's just a little exercise to showcase how hard it is sometimes to be creative. Probably you're kind of surprising us and having the perfect answer. But picture the following situation.
Is it good now to put me under pressure that I probably have to?
No, I don't know. I mean, I did the same exercise with Bianca, and she didn't come up with the answer. So I think
but she would also drink a beer with us. So
then it's fine. So picture the following situation. You have a pyramid, like the one from Egypt, right? But probably a smaller one, and the pyramid is flipped upside down. So the tip is on the table, but between the tip of the pyramid and the table, there's a $100 bill. So, and it's perfectly stable in the moment you're looking at it, but the one moment you touch anything of it, it just falls over. So your task is removing the $100 bill without letting the pyramid falling over. So how do you do that?
Probably what I know, as I could be creative, I do it differently. I say the pyramid is out of ice. Yeah. And I'm waiting and the sun melts the pyramid away, and then I take the wet dollar bill and put it in the sun afterwards, and it's gonna be fine.
Awesome.
That's very creative.
That's super creative. Any other solutions in your mind?
No, you stressed me already. I need to think about it.
That was a very creative one already, Tobi.
If you would give points for that, you definitely would have got now 100 points out of 100. So that's a beautiful answer. So the standard one is, and why I try to showcase that for also the listeners out there, is that just picture the same situation, and usually you don't come up with an idea because you're kind of inside your box. And now the only thing I need to do is read 2 sentences to you, and you come up with the answer. I only read the text from Wikipedia. It's about the 2020 California wildfires. The 2020 California wildfire season, part of the 2020 Western United States wildfire season, was a record-setting year of wildfires in California. By the end of the year, 9,639 fires had burned 4,000,000.3 acres, more than 4% of the state's roughly 100 million acres of land, making 2020 the largest wildfire season recorded in California's modern history. Any thoughts about how you could remove the $100 bill now?
I need to burn the pyramid? Or what I need to do?
That's also possible.
Yeah.
But
You don't want to lose the money, right?
yeah. So
maybe I cannot think straightforward. So tell me the answer.
It's not about you cannot think straightforward. It's just the task is remove the $100 bill. What we usually have in mind, we're kind of locked in our box of $100 bill is worth a $100 and we want to save it. But another answer could be we just
remove. Okay.
Just burn the $100 bill, right?
Okay.
So we just light up the $100 bill. It's burned. It's removed. Task is fulfilled. Tick the box, right? And that's a beautiful example of how our brain or we work. I mean, you already came up with beautiful ideas, right?
No, but I kept the money. But you burned the money.
Yes.
That's why you are CEO of Factory Automation and not me, Rainer. So no, I mean, it's a beautiful showcase that we as humans are way often when we are confronted with a creative challenge or a problem that we need to solve with creativity, we're kind of locked in different boxes and different patterns we build up in our mind. And sometimes we need to break out of those. And how do we achieve that how do we break out? I mean, in order to solve this problem by burning it is only by having diverse perspectives, reading articles, doing something else and get information in, right? That might trigger the solution. That's just a little showcase how creativity works and why it's hard. But Rainer, you
good
did
example.
You did a perfect job. Rainer.
Yes, very creative.
Really, it's up to you, Bibi. Sorry.
Maybe just one more last question. What is your vision for creativity for Siemens Digital Industries Factory Automation?
I think creativity is a vital part of the way of how we drive new things forward. And, to come to good ideas, you need creativity. And the question is, how can we foster it in an organization which is very much, driven by processes, which is more on the exploit side. My vision is that we have this ambidextrity, basically, having the exploit and the explore side. In order to have the explore side, I want people, who like, and they can't force everybody, who like to, invest time in creative thinking, getting the theory done on what are the best frame conditions to be effective, at least be effective in the explore side as good as possible. Mm-hmm. And that is going to be part of our toolkit of our routines. That would be great.
Really nice to hear. Thanks a lot, Rainer, for taking the time to talk to us and be our very first guest in our podcast, Talking Creativity. Thank you for your inspiring insights into both your personal life a little bit and your professional life at Siemens.
Thank you, Bianca. Thanks, Bias, for having me. And looking forward for this episode, but also for further episodes to come.